Hello, Classic Crew, and welcome to today's video.
Hello, Classic Crew. Nuh-uh. Last time I checked, I was a beautiful lady.
Hello, beautiful ladies.
Hi, Abby. I don't want to be Classic Crew. I'm gonna call you guys the Cheesy Crew, and I'm gonna spell it this way because nobody else spells it that way, and it's unique, and it goes with Brie, the I-E, and yeah. Hello, Cheesy Crew. Today we are going to be talking about how to bridge the political divide and talk to people on the other side. And Miss Classically Abby is there to help us.
We're going to be talking about 6 ways to talk to liberals.
So it's definitely not escaped my notice that Classically Abby has not been very successful at all with her YouTube channel in bridging that political divide. It looks like she's not even trying to bridge the political divide or the political gap. Like, some of the stuff that she's put out makes me think that she wants to stay polarized. But we're gonna give her the benefit of the doubt for this video. Maybe she's turning over a new leaf and trying to really speak to us on our level. But before we get started with this video, I want to ask you guys a question. I want you to really ponder this and write me a comment below. Have you guys always had the worldview that you've had now? Have you ever had completely different opinions on those really big issues, like the basis of your morality, on religion, on politics? And what was that experience like, going from that other point of view to the point of view that you have now? Did you feel embarrassed by the idea that you might have gotten something wrong? That maybe people who had disagreed with you very openly, maybe they were right? And maybe some of your favorite mentors who really shaped you and molded you, maybe they got something wrong. Have you ever experienced something like that? Tell me below in the comments. Let me know. I'm very interested in reading your responses. Okay, so full disclosure, I did come across this Classically Abby video a few months ago. I saw it, I thought it looked absolutely ridiculous, and I had a couple of things to say. And to be honest, there are some things that Abby says in this video that it goes to show she has a lot to learn about how to talk to people who have very differing political views than her, but she's trying, you know?
I recently read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. The book is talking about the moral psychology underlying left and right on the spectrum of American politics, and how by understanding the differences in approach by the two sides as regards morality, we can actually understand people better as individuals.
So this video is kind of like a book review.
Now, there were things about this book that I didn't love because Jonathan Haidt is a liberal and he was writing this book for liberals so that they could try and understand conservatives. But in doing so, he ended up being a little bit condescending to conservatives and sort of stereotyping our morals and our values.
She felt that he was condescending and stereotyping her beliefs. And I'm like, you do that to us all the time. She does this in this very video. It's ridiculous. Like, I swear to God, her voice is so high pitched. She seems all nice and cheery, but then her voice drops. It gets deeper and her eyes, like, they just bore into you, and she gets very...
For the woke, for leftists, they believe that they are the only ones who know what true morality is and that we need to tear everything down and start over. Now think about that. From their words and actions, it is very clear that they believe they are smart enough to tear down everything that we have known and start it over with their woke ideology. And anything that is not their woke ideology is immoral, wrong, evil, bad. We need to get rid of it and start from scratch using their version of morality.
Her demeanor completely changes when she is stereotyping what leftists believe. Again, like, do unto others. If you don't want your beliefs to be stereotyped, I'm all here for it, but you need to extend the same thing to leftists and to liberals. I would really appreciate if you showed some patience, tried to be more understanding, because, whew, this video. But maybe it's a step in the right direction because she did read a book by a liberal. She read something that's outside of her sphere. She didn't just read something from somebody who will tell her her own opinions back to her. She was willing to like listen and try to understand somebody else. And she still found things that were valuable in that book. So that's great. I really like it when we can try to have a dialogue with other people.
There were also some really valuable lessons in the book that I think were worth talking about and will allow us to view people on the other side of the aisle as people and not as enemies. And I think that that's just a really hard thing in American politics today, is that really often across the aisle we view each other not as humans, but just as someone who disagrees with me. We see them as their politics, and people are so much more than that. So even though conservatives and liberals disagree on a lot, we are all people, and it's worth trying to understand the other side.
I 100% agree. I think that it's important to have a dialogue with people who do not think the same way as you do. Try to find some common ground. I know that this is a controversial point because, and politics definitely does fit into that. When it comes to political discourse, something that's really bugged me for the last year or so, or the last 5 years actually, when you give a politician so much leeway because, oh, at least they're not that person on the other side, so I'm going to forgive them for, warmongering. I'm going to forgive them for mismanaging a pandemic over here. I'm going to forgive them for the crime bill. We don't need to be making excuses for these politicians. We don't need to give them that much leeway. Meanwhile, there's so much animosity towards Bill down the street who saw that this election was between two shitty options and said, hey, I'm gonna sit this one out. No. People misdirect all of their rage that they have towards a broken system. They direct it towards people who feel very discouraged towards the system, or people who maybe even have the same beliefs, have the same morals, but compromise differently. So, I'm just going to say that when it comes to politics, I believe in extending some leeway towards your fellow person who has very little power on their own and who maybe disagree with you about who the lesser two evils is. Meanwhile, I think that we should blame more of the politicians who actually choose evil and who choose corruption and have an extreme amount of power, more than any of us could ever imagine having. We barely started this and I went off on my tangent already. Like I said, she had some good ideas. Let's see people as people. I agree. Let's be kind, let's be understanding. But then it goes downhill. All of these tips that she's about to give you do not apply to leftists.
We can't really negotiate or have a fruitful conversation with leftists and wokists because we're starting on entirely different footing. It honestly doesn't make any sense to engage in conversation with someone who doesn't have common ground with us.
But I'm gonna save that part of the video for later.
But now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt and 6 ways to talk to liberals.
Let's just start. The parts of the video that are actually worthwhile.
Number 1 is to make people feel understood before trying to change their mind.
Make them feel like you understand them. How about actually trying to understand? This is another issue that I have with political discourse, where you have two people talking and they're just fighting, they're butting heads, and they're not trying to understand each other, not trying to have any common ground. They're just going into the political discourse, wanting to convert the other person. I do think that political discourse works well when you're starting off open-minded. You're starting off with the idea of, okay, I have these ideas. I think that these are the best ideas, but I'm gonna listen to this other person over here because there's a possibility that maybe I got something wrong. Maybe there's a possibility that they know something that I don't. And I'm willing to listen to them and understand them and not go in with the assumption that I'm going to change their minds. I'm going to consider what they have to say. And if what they have to say doesn't make sense, then I will talk that out. If both parties or if all parties involved go in with that sort of attitude, I think that that's for the better. Making people feel like they're understood, it makes it sound like you're not actually trying to understand people, or you're only trying to understand people as a means to an end.
You have to appeal to their emotions first before trying to appeal to their reason. So you want to be nice, you want to be kind, you want to show that you do understand their point of view and that you can work with that, you understand what they're saying.
You're trying to be nice to them as a means to an end. That comes off as completely disingenuous. And I don't really like that.
So you always want to make sure that when you're talking to someone on the other side of the aisle, you make sure they feel heard, they feel understood, that you are showing them that you have good intentions when you talk to them. Because if it just comes off like, I have to convince you no matter what, then they're not going to feel like they can accept that reasoning. That line of reasoning will not matter, and you will lose your opportunity to maybe change someone's mind.
But I do agree with the overall message of like actually hearing people out.
We often will have a gut reaction to things. We'll have a feeling and then end up explaining it and justifying it and reasoning for it afterward. We create a sophisticated reason for why we believe it rather than the other way around. It's not that we will have a logical thought and then our emotions follow. Usually our emotions will go first and then our reasoning will explain that emotion for us.
Both tip 1 and tip 2 are pretty similar. Understand them and understand their thought processes.
Number 2 is recognizing the thought process someone on the other side of the aisle is having when disagreeing with you. Jonathan Haidt writes, reasoning can take us to almost any conclusion we want to reach because we ask, can I believe it when we want to believe something, but must I believe it when we don't want to believe?
I agree that people aren't swayed as much by cold hard facts. People are more emotional than they think that they are. That's why even though I do agree with Ben Shapiro's little motto of facts over feelings, facts don't care about your feelings, he's more swayed by emotional appeals than he thinks. I think that that's true of people, no matter what your politics are.
Number 3 is that people in the West are weird. Let me explain what I'm talking about.
Weird is an acronym, by the way.
So Jonathan Haidt writes, nearly all research in psychology is conducted on a very small subset of the human population. People from cultures that are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, which forms the acronym WEIRD. Weird people are statistical outliers. They are the least typical, least representative people you could study if you want to make generalizations about human nature.
Which I agree with. I think that when you do your little studies on people, you should have a very diverse base, a diverse sample size. That's what I meant. We'll just like move along to the next point.
Number 4 is that just because someone is born with a certain disposition, that doesn't make them predestined to be left-wing or right-wing. Their temperament could make them more predisposed, but it's not for sure. It's not guaranteed.
Somebody can be very strict and whatever and still be a liberal, and people's personality traits don't really go with their politics as much as you might think. Yeah, I'm okay.
Honestly, people just aren't that simple and aren't that shallow.
I agree.
Number 5 is understand why liberals are skeptical of religion and groupishness so that you can really try and address their concern.
I don't even know what the hell she means by that, because like she talks about skeptical of groupishness. No, you can have a group of friends. You can work together in teams. I would recommend that you do that, because I think that often when it comes to politics, people don't want to get involved in politics because I'm just little old me. I'm like just a grain of sand on this big beach and I don't really matter. I can't make a difference. And you can make a difference together as a group. Forming together as a group could be a good thing, so long as, you know, we're not doing group think, as long as you're like able to think for yourself within that group, you know what I'm saying? But this one is when it gets a little bit more on the condescending side.
True happiness only comes from the feeling of being part of something greater. That's why you have leftists and wokists treating that philosophy as a religion, because it feels like they're a part of something greater than themselves.
My opinion on like Why does religion exist in society? One, you don't have like a scientific explanation for why things are the way they are, so you make up stories to explain how did we get here, why are we here, blah, 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 so that you don't have to just say to those questions, I don't actually know. Now you have like a God of the gaps kind of answer. Secondly, morality. We have like a secular version of morality in terms of like us having laws and stuff, but religion takes that one step further, because if you do something wrong, even if you don't get caught by other people, God knows. God knows, and he'll punish your ass. Okay? So you better be good, you better watch out, you better not cry. Third thing, what happens to us after we die? We want to survive, we want to be here as long as possible, and we know that that's not going to happen. So what do? Sometimes we turn to religion. We can have children, even if we're not going to live forever, we're not going to survive our own deaths. Hopefully our children will be able to survive longer than us, and then they'll have children and we'll be able to pass on our lineage that way. We'll leave a legacy behind us with children, become famous, write a book, make a movie or something. Do something that makes your mark on the world. So that's one outlet for that. But another outlet is believing that there's some sort of afterlife, maybe reincarnation, heaven, something. Nirvana.
When you don't have real religion, you make one up.
Also, politics isn't in any way a substitute for religion. Religion and politics have completely different functions in society. Religion is about your personal beliefs, your relationship to or service to any deities or supernatural forces that may or may not be out there. Politics is more concerned with life here on earth. We want to create policies that will save people's lives or improve their lives. When we elect a politician and there's a problem that they need to solve, we don't want them to simply think and pray about that problem. We want them to take action and create good policies or support good policies that will help improve or save people's lives. And there are also people who are deeply, deeply, deeply religious and who are also leftists and liberals. So that doesn't make sense to me either. I mentioned this a couple of videos ago, but like my first experience with politics and with religion, it came from me growing up as a conservative Christian. And politics was just an extension of their religion. They did not believe in the separation between church and state. They really drove home the point that in order to be a good, devout, religious person, you had to be a Republican. So if anybody is like conflating religion with politics, I would say it's those people and not leftists. But that's just me though.
For people who are participating in religion, it brings them joy, it brings them happiness, and it's super important to creating communities, creating good behavior among societies.
It depends on the religion. It depends on what your philosophy is with the religion, because my experience of religion did go to a Christian school, went to a Christian summer camp, I went to church on Sundays, very much immersed in that Christian world, which meant that when I went from being Christian to agnostic to atheist, I felt very, very alienated, and it was a very tumultuous time for me. However, I made it out okay, and now I look back and I think, okay, there was a lot of this us versus them mentality. They pretty much raised me to be very narrow-minded towards other people, like only talk to people who do not believe the same things that you do if you're trying to proselytize to them, trying to convert them, that sort of thing. Not if you're going to try to listen to them and consider what they have to say. Oh, no, no, no. There's no room for that. They'll just lead you astray. So there was a lot of division when it comes to religion too. And now being on the other side, I do feel like I can be friends with people no matter what your religious beliefs are. So I think that I'm better off not being religious.
Being able to show why, from a societal perspective, religion is a good thing and not a bad thing is going to be a really good talking point with liberals. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory said, "The meaning of a system cannot arise within the system. The meaning of our lives must come from outside of ourselves.
But she does talk about how, we have to explain to them why religion's important for societies. Even if you do explain to people what the good things about religion are, one, you can have that without religion. And she says that like it's a bad thing, like, you're substituting religion for a fake religion. There's a connection between politics and religion, and both of those are investing in something outside of yourself. Even if you explain why religion's important, I can agree that religion's a good thing or whatever. That's very different from me then changing my mind and saying, okay, I'm going to believe in this God I don't actually believe in. I'm going to serve and worship this God. I'm not religious because I think that religion's a bad thing. I'm not religious because I don't believe in it. I don't believe these stories. I don't believe in these characters. I don't believe in this God. So even if you say these are really good for society, that's different from whether or not God is actually real and whether or not I should believe in God, whether or not I should serve this God, if I should worship this God.
Number 6 is that liberals don't understand conservative ideology the way that conservatives understand liberal ideology. The reason that liberals don't give conservatives the benefit of the doubt is because they truly do not understand the way that we think.
These last two tips are just like really patronizing. They assume that the liberal doesn't understand what she's going on about. Abby, you said it yourself. You grew up sheltered. You were not challenged in a really big way until you went to graduate school. That was only a few years ago.
So I grew up in a religious home. I was pretty sheltered at the time, and I didn't spend a lot of time facing situations where I was going to have to put my values to a test. And it wasn't until I left home for my master's degree in New York City that I actually did come face to face with things that challenged my faith, challenged my beliefs, and challenged my values.
So this idea that like the liberals just don't understand conservatism the way that conservatives understand liberals. Oh, really? Do you think that you're an expert on liberals, Abby? Or on leftists? The scary leftists, which we'll get to in a minute, I promise you.
They don't understand that conservatives are really trying to bring about more happiness in society by encouraging society to be a community built on values that are accurate about human nature and moral virtue.
She talks about the importance of community, which again doesn't make sense to me.
And which have rules that are the proper balance of humility and aspiration. And the reason liberals don't understand this is because they're weird.
Again, let's remember that WEIRD is the acronym that she found in the book. We're talking about like collectivism versus individuality. I'd say that Western culture is more individualistic rather than collectivist, but this seems more like an East versus West type of thing. I don't understand how this is a conservative versus liberal thing, because when I look at the acronym, this isn't specific just to liberals.
They view everyone as individuals. They do not see the communal binds that make people happier. And in doing so, in breaking people apart into individuals, they are making people lonelier and sadder because they don't see what the connections actually bring.
She doesn't back this up with anything. She's saying, oh, you're making each other sadder, you're breaking each other up, blah, blah, blah. They've forgotten this. They don't understand this. This goes against your first point of understanding people.
So the thing that's super important as conservatives is to show them what conservatives really think and to show them how we think, instead of just random rules and puritanism that they think that we believe in because of social media and movies and pop culture.
Because of social media, movies, and pop culture. Because of your YouTube channel where you tell us how to dress.
Modesty is a way for you to respect yourself and respect others. When you go to the park and you're surrounded by families with children, is it fair to dress in a way that's distracting? No.
Where you tell people whether or not they should be hooking up, where you assume their reasonings for hooking up, where you assume why they dress the way that they dress.
Harry Styles in a dress on the cover of Vogue. Yeah, that really happened. It's 2020. Anything can happen, it seems.
Abby, you made a video about Harry Styles called Men Wearing Dresses is trash. We're in the middle of a fucking pandemic. There's so many other issues, and yet you're so concerned about whether or not he's wearing a dress or whether he's wearing pants. And that doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit mean.
People were saying, oh my gosh, Harry Styles in a dress is just my type. He looks so handsome. He looks so great. No. Incorrect.
To quote the ever-popular musical Annie, it's what you wear from ear to ear and not from head to toe. Okay? I care if Harry Styles is wearing a mask.
They believe that personal freedom in every moment is the highest possible good. And they have forgot that in the pursuit of liberty in this sense, they have actually made people sadder and more alone and deprived them of the duties and obligations that give people meaning.
I care if you're wearing a mask because even though that steps on the whole personal liberty thing and your freedom, I think that the people around you should have the option to not get sick. I don't really understand this idea of liberals not caring about other people. Besides individual liberty, I do also care about other people. I don't want them to go in debt for the rest of their lives because they had a medical issue and they needed to go to the hospital, but they didn't have insurance. So that's why I'm for things like universal health care, because I don't just care about me and how I'm going to live my life and fuck everybody else. I do actually care about other people and other people's quality of life. But then maybe I don't fit into this because she's talking to liberals.
Liberals who, like conservatives, are trying to do the best for everyone, but are still working within the same framework as we have about morality and social structures. Our disagreements with liberals can be significant, but very often they're more about practice than about principle.
What kind of liberal is she talking about? She's not very clear on this because you're not talking about what kind of policy positions. You're not giving me a clear definition. Do you mean a liberal like Timothy? Like David? Like the roaming millennial? Like those kinds of liberals?
I believe that working with and talking to liberals can really create a fruitful conversation, and it's something that we should regularly and constantly pursue. And this is especially true because we need liberals on our side to fight against this wokist ideology, this leftist wokist ideology. Conservatives and liberals need to work together to stand against that kind of thinking.
She made it very clear that all of this advice that she gave us had nothing to do with people like me. So before Classically Abby gave any of her tips,
so you want to be nice, you want to be kind.
Video took another nosedive, okay? We're a minute and a half in, and she's like, let me tell you the difference between a woketivist, a leftist, and a liberal. Liberals are okay. We can talk to liberals. We have to talk to liberals so that they don't turn into those crazy woketivists. But those woketivists,
we can't really negotiate or have a fruitful conversation with leftists and wokists because we're starting on entirely different footing. It honestly doesn't make any sense to engage in conversation with someone who doesn't have common ground with us because they don't look at how can we make things better from here. They think we need to tear it down and start over.
Don't even bother trying to bridge that gap for them. They're too far gone. Too far gone.
Now, before I get started, I want to get out of the way here and now the difference between leftists and wokists on one hand and liberals on the other. Leftists live out their woke ideology as religion. Even though it doesn't kind of look like a typical religion, it is one.
Again, what does that mean? Being religious is a way to invest in something greater than yourself. So is politics. And people can feel very strongly about politics because politics shapes the way that we live our lives. It can shape world history in a way. It's very important. And so people feel very strongly about it.
They want to tear down our existing moral structures and society and start over from the beginning. They believe that all of the things that we now accept, things that are common sense,
So she talks like this. She talks in generality. She's very vague. She's not using any specific examples.
Things that define morality, define right and wrong, define our social structure, all of that was created during a time when there was too much anything, too much bias, racism, any ism to have any value or legitimacy or moral authority.
Things that define morality, define right and wrong. What are they? And she's using very extremist language. Again, like everything about what we know to be true is wrong. What do we know to be true? Give me some examples. But also, I'm guessing that if you do give me examples, it's not going to be everything about it is wrong. It's just, it needs to be questioned. It needs to be reformed. And we shouldn't just keep those things around just because it's part of tradition, just because it was always there.
And anything that is not their woke ideology is immoral, wrong, evil, bad. We need to get rid of it and start from scratch using their version of morality.
Some people are open to new ideas, some people aren't. That's not to do with like whether or not you're woke or whether or not you're a leftist.
Life and people are broader than the categories we try to fit them into. So with that in mind, if you meet someone that has a personality that seems to fit more in one box or the other, that doesn't mean that they have to be that one thing.
You can be narrow-minded and unwilling to hear what other people have to say, no matter what your politics are. But I've noticed that when it comes to our big issues like, I don't know, climate change, I'm hearing from people on her side, oh, no, nothing to see here, not a big deal.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Sell your house to Aquaman. You think that it's bad that people are working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet? That's a you problem. Maybe you should have taken a job that actually pays you more.
The fact is that if you had to work more than one job to have a roof over your head or food on the table, you probably shouldn't have taken the job that's not paying you enough. That'd be a you problem.
But no, we can't raise the minimum wage. She's talking about how leftists want to start from scratch. No, what I'm seeing from the left is people saying, hey, people in other countries have really good ideas too. Other people have worked out the whole universal healthcare thing where people aren't dying from preventable diseases. They're not going in debt because they got sick or injured. How can we implement something like that into our healthcare system? I got a little bit heated, but again, she was 1.5 minutes into her video and she got very heated. But then she went back to speaking in a high-pitched voice and being very perky and nice.
If you haven't read the book, let me know in the comments which of these you would like to incorporate into your next conversation with someone who disagrees with you. I'd love to hear. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps out my channel when you do that. It really makes sure that my channel is growing, the Classic Crew is growing, and I really appreciate when you guys take the time to do that.
Yeah, how about you come over here and you can subscribe to me if you wish. And I just happen to have a playlist of Ben and Abby videos. I mostly talked about Ben because I think that he's worse. And a lot of people believe what he has to say. Since this is a classically Abby video, I know that I was a little hard on her and stuff, but just want to make it clear, by all means write a comment, but no creepy comments about her body, no. And any private information, we're not talking about that either. But yeah, be sure to leave a comment if you got this far. What are your 6 tips to get through to liberals?